So best practices, I just wanted to point everyone where you can find this best practices, right? If you go to support.cambiumnetworks.com, under Wi-Fi 6 documentation, you can see a lot of documents there. Let me quickly switch to a web browser. If you go to support.cambiumnetworks.com, click on downloads. If you scroll down to enterprise Wi-Fi 6 access point and documentation. So here you can see uh, there are a lot of documents explaining about the auto RF. These are things which we are going to discuss in now. Uh, uh, Auto RF dynamic channel selection, or see specifically the best practices. You can see it here. Configure the best practice for MDU, and this version will be revising. So please keep a watch on the version you are downloading. And if you are looking for the MDU deployment gate, there is a deployment gate also is available. So these are the two documents which will be useful. And we will go through this document today. And I'm not going through the document exactly. We will go through the CN Maestro configuration, and we will talk about all the points which is mentioned in the document. Okay. Now switching back to.
One quick question on that. As we have updates to software, we will be making changes to this, right? So it's important to understand what version you're on versus the version of the document that you've downloaded, correct?
That is correct. That is correct, Derek.
Thanks, Asa.
Now let's quickly log into the CN Maestro, and let's start with the configuration, right? Configuration, if you go to Wi-Fi profiles, and let's pick up one of the AP group, right? Now, in the AP group, as you know, you need to configure the basic settings and the WLANs pulling. You have to pull the WLANs to the AP group. The important section I want to cover here is the radio settings, right? Now, you have a software defined radios if you are using XC34 or XC34 TN or XC58 radios. You have the software defined radios here. But the important thing here is you can see each band has different tabs. So when you're configuring 2.4, please click on 5 gig band and do the configuration for the 5 gig. Okay, similarly for the 6 gig. Okay, this is one thing I just wanted to highlight. Now, in the basic, if you're creating a new AP group, most of the best practices are already taken care. Few are we are working on it, and few will be available in the next release, right? In case of let's talk about 2.4 gigahertz band, right? So these all you can keep it default, and enhanced roaming is for the sticky clients. You know that. So I'm not recommending to enable it until you see there is a real sticky client problem. We can cover this using a different method. You don't need to explicitly disconnect the wireless client. So we have seen it. If you are explicitly disconnecting the wireless client, sometimes the wireless client will blacklist that BSS ID and will not get connected for 30 minutes. So that's why by default it is disabled. So I don't recommend to enable it. Let's keep it disabled. Going to channel scan. So this channel scan, we have two methods. One is off channel scan and continuous background scan. So if you are using Wi-Fi 6 and 6E access points, I recommend to use continuous background scan. Continuous background scan has an advantage when compared to off channel scan. Let me explain that here. In case of off channel scan, the radio will go for a foreign channel and wait there for 100 milliseconds. So it's kind of a beacon time. Beacon time. It will wait for there and come back to the current channel. But in case of continuous background scan, the switching happens very fast. Like it will spend only 25 milliseconds in the foreign channels and come back to the current channel. And it will take care of if there is a OS data pending in the OS queue of that radio, then this will be postponed. So it will not go for an off-channel scan or a foreign channel. So it will look for the data, what type of data is in the queue, and based on that, it will take the decision. So always recommend to enable continuous background scan. And I always recommend to enable the next is channel switch announcement. This you already know, CSA announcements goes on beacons and prop responses, right? And which will tell the wireless client this particular radio is moving from channel 1 to channel 6. So based on the algorithms, auto RF algorithms, consider the AP decided to move from one channel. Channel 1 is congested. It can be a packet error rate is high and it hits the threshold. It decide to move to channel 6. Then CSA announcement packets will go in the beacon and probe response to the client informing, okay, I'm moving to channel 6. So the client need not to spend for so many duty cycles to go and find the SSID for different channels. It knows that, okay, my AP is moving from channel, my radio is moving from channel 1 to channel 6. So it can take a quick decision to move to the next channel. So I prefer to enable channel switch announcement. Now going to auto RF. So now before, what is auto RF? Auto RF is an algorithm developed from Cambium to take care of or select the best possible channel in that deployment, and to select best power in that deployment. So we call that as two more selections. One is dynamic channel and dynamic power. So I recommend to enable dynamic channel in an MDU deployment as well as dynamic power. We'll go to dynamic power. First, let's enable dynamic channel. So that's one, you enabled it. Now there are three events can trigger a change of the channel. So consider you are saying that enable packet error rate. If the 30% of the packets are error, then the AP will decide to move to a best channel which has lower packet error rate. Right? How do we build this database? So when the AP boots up, it goes for based on what you selected for the channel scan. If it's a continuous background scan, it goes for all the foreign channels and gather the information continuously to build the best algorithm for deciding which is the best next channel or what's the best power which I can use it. Right. So I recommend to enable packet error rate, recommend to enable channel utilization, which clearly tells if the channel is utilized more than a particular time, then you move to the a different channel. Same for the noise also. Right. And one important thing I just wanted to mention here is channel hold time. I recommend to have it for 1440. It's a 1 day. What does this do, right? This you are telling the access point. Consider you started the algorithm. You know that at morning 3 a.m. you know that this is the best channel. Hold that channel for 1 day, and when we say hold that channel for 1 day, you may have a question at the after some time. Consider it's a airport deployment or a student school deployment. People are coming, or a student housing deployment. Students are coming back at the same time at 3 p.m. So there will be a lot of clients getting connected, and there may be some packet or channel utilization at that time will be higher. So will that at that time, will that get changed? Yes, there is an algorithm. If it's continuously happening, then any of this is a packet error rate or channel utilization or noise is continuously happening within that 24 hours, then AP will again change the channel. Otherwise, AP won't do a recalculation of the entire algorithm. Okay, so recommend to configure 1440. That's for the, and remaining things we can keep it default for dynamic channel. Now going to dynamic power. When you recommend to enable dynamic power, and always enable by band in case of MDU, so that it knows that, okay, how many 2.4 neighbors are nearby. the previous question. Is it lot of APs are seen on the air, right? So a lot of BSS beacons are seen on the air. So you can keep it by band, and usually this show transmit power. You can configure from 8 to 5 to 20 in usual deployment. This is a number which we came after doing observing many deployments, right? So this should be sufficient for a 1 IP deployment. In 2.4, keep it 8, and the minimum neighbor threshold I recommend to enable 1. That means if you see one neighbor, I can see it, then reduce my power. And if you don't see any neighbor, then increase the power to the maximum, right? So that's another point, another configuration I recommend to do it, minimum one neighbor. And cell size overlap, here you can decide what should be my coverage. Okay, so in the document it is clearly mentioned how you can define the cell size threshold based on show neighbor details, right? You can see how much is a signal strength of my neighbor. Based on the RSSI, you can define your cell threshold, right? So it's clearly mentioned on the document what should we do and what should we select. Okay, in the usual deployment, we may select as 70 or 70 as a cell, 70% as the overall cell size threshold for 2.4. This is the configuration for 2.4. Now we need to click on. Another question usually happen is, can I do this together? Yes, you can do both dynamic channel and dynamic power together. Okay, in the previous version it was a drop down. Now we changed to the 2 tabs so that we can avoid the confusion. Now going to the 5 gigahertz band, again by default it is 40 megahertz width, so you get more number of non-overlapping channels, and this we can keep it default. Enhanced roaming I will not recommend to enable. Channels can again continuous background scan and enable channel switch announcements. And in case of auto RF, enable dynamic channel, dynamic packet error rate, channel utilization and noise. Change the hold time to 1440. And next, going to the dynamic power. Enable the dynamic power, same in 5 gig band, by band, the mode as by band. And here because of the nature of 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz wavelength difference, so as you know, or people used to say that 2.4 can go further away, but all because of the wavelength, right? So you can increase in 2.4, you can reduce to 8 minimum, but in case of 5 gig, let's keep it to 15 or 18 based on the deployments, right? And next is the minimum neighbor threshold. Again here 1, and cell overlap as 75 or 70 as the overlap threshold. These are the two configurations for 5 gig and 6 gig. Say you have to do it for the 6 gig also. These are the main points which I recommend in the radio configuration. And going to the next network configuration, I always recommend in case of MDU, don't forget to enable the Ethernet port as trunk and allow all the VLANs. Okay, now in some of the deployments, if you want the native VLAN should be changed, then you can do that. For example, you wanted to change the native VLAN to 1600, then you can configure that here. One thing, if you're doing that, click on VLAN 1 and remove request option all. Okay, then you go to VLAN 1600, enable request option all. Request option all enables all the other sub options like option 43 and option DNS options and default gateway. So this will give this is the another recommendation we have. If you are wanted to change the management VLAN to a different VLAN, just enable and update it here. And going back, the remaining things I will keep it as very simple. Now, one more recommendation what I have for MDU, because this is one AP deployment per unit. I always recommend to enable access control policy. In access control policy, let me go to the access control policy and come back. Where is this access control policy, right? So if you go to the configuration, Wi-Fi profiles, go to the access control policy, and there are two access control policies available. Let's look into the AP group policy. Now create an AP group policy, say that test AP ACP access control policy, and you can define this is for global, or you can define to specific tenant. I recommend to use air cleaner rules. So what is air cleaner rules, right? Air cleaner rules will create a filter rules to eliminate or drop all the unwanted packets on the air. So if you click on it, by default, we know that, okay, there is no DHCP server on the wireless side. So you don't need to send any packet which is source port as 67, 68 and D port as 67, right? Towards the wireless, because there is no DHCP server on the wireless side. The DHCP discover should always go from wireless to wired, right? That means the source port is 68 and D port is 67, right? So unwanted packets, right? That's what we will be denying it on the wireless side. So once you click it, by default, it's all the rules will get enabled. And once you have this, this is minimum thing. I just recommend to enable it. Then you go back to AP group, like configuration, AP group, and going to access control policy, enable that particular rule which you created. Okay, and here you have the view rules. So okay, you can go and check it. What are the rules got created? You can see here, right? So that's another recommendation. I request to enable it. And in the services, I think it's all, I will keep it default. Yeah, one important thing, in case of an MDU deployment and you are deploying ePSK, that means unique PSK for every apartment and unique VLAN. Then I recommend to enable this GTK per VLAN option. Okay, so this is one thing which I recommend to enable. What does this GTK per VLAN do? GTK per VLAN is group transient key for each VLAN, so that only that particular client having that GTK can decrypt all the broadcast and multicast packet. So this is another important thing which I recommend to enable in case of MDU deployment.